back in session here. We're going to move to, we're still on topic number 12, discussion of property tax and appeals. We've got a bill that the chairman and I agreed for the committee to take a look at. It's LSO 179, County Optional Property Tax Refund Program. I think Representative Yin is the guy that will take us through this bill. Representative Yin, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the chairman, both co-chairs for allowing me to present this bill. You know, I was thinking we've had rising property tax assessments in a lot of counties in the past several years. And I'm trying to think of a way to make sure, as Representative Jennings had mentioned, you know, the lady with the fixed income that's seeing their property taxes rise, not through any fault of their own, other than holding a house, right? So they live in their house, they've lived in it for several years, but they're on a fixed income and they're at risk of getting kicked out of their house. We have a statewide property tax refund program. It hasn't been funded in the last few years. And so something that kind of came into my head was the idea of possibly allowing these counties that are seeing increased property tax revenue be able to use some of that to ensure the safety and security of some of their most vulnerable members that have lived in the area forever, but are still at risk of getting kicked out of their house. So I present to you 22 LSO 0179, working draft 0.6. This is the county optional property tax refund program, and it's very tightly structured based on our statewide property tax refund program. So I've emailed the entire committee the statute for a statewide property tax refund program. That is 39-13-109C, little Romanet 5. And so I'll walk through the bill, and this bill is very closely related to this. And I want to thank Heather Jervis from LSO for helping me out making this bill happen for the committee. So we'll start on page 2. Page 1 is, you know, the opening. This falls under taxpayer remedies, which our current property tax refund program already does. And it just outlines how a county can set up its own property tax refund program. So each county shall have the option of setting up a program. And then we have a set of guidelines, and the county would adopt rules as required to fulfill the requirements of the program. And the program shall apply to the subparagraphs below. Big A. So basically, a lot of this language is essentially the same as the state property tax refund program. This one outlines the timeline and basically what the requirements are. So if the applicant has to have lived for at least 5 years, and they basically file an affidavit. This is pretty much exactly the same as the statewide program, and it goes through the county treasurer in that situation as well. So we go to page 3. There's an attestation that the property has been occupied for more than 9 months. So this is something that I added, which is not in our statewide property tax refund program, because I wanted to ensure that this only covers people that are at risk of getting kicked out of their homes, right? So we don't need to grant refunds to second homeowners because second homeowners aren't being at risk of getting kicked out of their funds. The intent here is the people who have lived in the community for a long time and are at risk of being forced to sell their house and getting kicked out of their home. So they have to be living in their homes essentially to make sure that that happens. Paragraph C, the person participating in the county shall qualify for the refund. Okay, so this has a requirement that they've paid their taxes on time, so they're not already delinquent, and that has limits on their income, and it has limits on their assets. So the limits on income and assets are defined to match the statewide program. This is to try to match the constitutionality of the program. So our statewide program hasn't been challenged in constitutionality. as essentially defining a program that gives to the poor. And that's because we have asset limits and income limits. And I'm trying not to go outside of the boundaries of our already existing statewide program. So at the most, a county can only set asset and income limits to the maximum of what we already have in our statewide program. But it does allow them to set different limits, but at the maximum, we're not going to let them do worse than the statewide program already has. And then paragraph D, that's the asset definition. So we had the income one, and this is the asset one. And then E shall be in the form of a refund. And then this is defining how much that they could have refunded. And so this is the same as the statewide program. You basically can't have more than half of the liability refunded. Paragraph F on page 5. The county has to fund the program. If the county doesn't fund the program, you don't have a program. This is basically the same as our statewide program. We don't have a program if we don't fund the program. We just have a program in statute. So nothing in this shall affect any assessment. This doesn't affect assessment. It's just a county optional tax refund program. And it requires that it needs to be published so everyone knows that it exists. And then the county shall promulgate rules. And that's about it. It leaves it pretty flexible. The Department of Revenue, I believe, is the one that promulgates a lot of the rules for the statewide program. And so in this situation, the county would be the one deciding on the rules. My assumption is that they'll want one similar to the statewide program, but I leave that flexibility in statute for the county to implement it. And that is the bill, and I will stand for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Yen. Any questions, members? Okay, any questions? See none from the committee. Oh, Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick one. I wondered about the, on page 2, line 16, have you looked at maybe going longer than 5 years? And I even thought about even on page 3, line 3, make sure that they live there longer than 9 months. Not that I see that those are a big catch, but I just wondered why you picked those out, and had you thought about anything longer than that? Thank you.
Go ahead, Representative Yen.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler. So the 5 years, I think, is already existing in our program. I'm fine with making that longer if the committee so chooses. I'm very amenable to amending it, because I think the intent is for people not to get kicked out of their homes. So the 9 months, we can make it longer. I think the 9 months is a good place there for anyone who is on a fixed income but still has some travel rights. So if they travel like a month out of the year, I don't want them to be at risk of not being able to use the program. But I just wanted a safe number to prevent it from being abused by people who don't really live in the community.
Okay, any other questions? Representative Yen. Okay, is there any public comment on this? First, I'd take folks, anybody out there against this bill? Want to speak against the bill? Anybody online?
Mr.
Against the
Chairman,
bill?
I don't know if this person is for or against the bill, but we do have Vice Mayor Jorgensen here.
I think
Online.
he's probably for it. Yeah, I'm going to take a chance on that one. Okay, so we're going to move to folks who are in favor of the bill. Can you admit the Vice Mayor right now? And then we'll go to the room and then we'll wrap it up here. Just one online. Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
Go ahead and
Thank you,
introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Arn Jorgensen, Vice Mayor of the Town of Jackson. Just very briefly, would like to speak, as was just suggested that I would, in favor of this bill. I did send you a brief email this morning stating that, and I just want to slightly elaborate on that. There were several comments made yesterday about the challenges of our community and what we're facing. This speaks to many of those challenges. I won't repeat those. And most specifically that I want to talk about a bit was there was some discussion yesterday about taking advantage of existing revenue sources that are in place. And as I mentioned, we are very serious about doing that. The town of Jackson has been taking some significant steps in that regard. One of the things that we're very sensitive to when we talk about particularly property taxes are exactly the demographic of the folks that Representative Yin has been speaking about. So that's why we are in support of this. I stand for any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, any questions of the Vice Mayor? Okay, thank you for joining us. Okay, remember, folks here in the room, just make your way up. We have 4 chairs. You can just do the lineup and we got batter up on deck. All works in the whole thing. Okay, Mr. Assessor, go ahead and introduce yourself again.
Is that on? Green light.
Those buttons are a little touchy.
Gonna slow it down. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Matt Keating, Jordan County Assessor. I just briefly just want to give a real life example. A few weeks ago in my office, I had a lady, she's 60 years old, and her husband was in the garage some time ago doing something stupid with gasoline. He ended up catching himself on fire, ended up in a situation where he's rolling in the grass and the grass is burning. So, and he is now 70 years old. She is his primary caretaker. Her day consists of rolling him out of bed, changing his diaper, doing his physical therapy, making him something to eat, and cleaning the house. She does not have the ability to work. She said, "You raised my taxes." Her house is valued at $177,000. It's very appropriate. But the $1,200+ a year of taxes that she's asked to pay, she can't afford. This couple is living on $900 a month Social Security. And if she doesn't pay it, we will sell her house on the courthouse steps. Thank you very much.
Any questions of Assessor Keating? Okay, see, Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Assessor Keating, thank you for testifying. I know you visited with me and probably several of our delegation about trying to get funds back in the already on the books. So I'm in favor of this bill, but it does put the emphasis back on the county, which I would hope our county would see this favorably, just as Teton County is looking at that, until we can come to the point where we can fund the other. But what is your feeling on this particular bill?
I think this bill, or I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No,
I think this bill or something similar is just essential in the process. This is the circuit breaker. I don't know how many, I don't know how many phone calls the other assessors get. I'm sure it's similar, but we've got a number of people in Natrona County that say, I'm on a fixed income, and our property taxes are going up because of property values and the sales. It's incredible. People coming in from New York, California, Colorado, Utah, et cetera. I really appreciate this conversation. It's really needed. It doesn't, whatever mechanism you guys use, I think it's more than appropriate. If there's going to be pushback from the county commissioners because it comes out of their budget, look, maybe potentially just consider another avenue. Maybe if there's an affidavit and certain parameters required, put that burden on the assessor. And I would take the affidavit, I would scan that into the account, and I'd make them exempt.
right? I mean, you think the example you gave, you could help 1,000 folks like that for basically $1 million. I mean, you do a lot of good, So, yeah. Okay. Well, very good. Appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Anyone else here in favor of the bill? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close public comment. Members, what's your pleasure on LSO 179? It's been moved by Representative Sweeney, seconded by Representative Roscoe. Okay, let's work the bill. Are there any amendments, page 1 over to page 2? Nobody on line 16, page 2. Okay. Okay. We would, page 3. Okay, page 4. And page 5. Okay, seeing no amendments, can we please call roll on 179? Determine the committee will sponsor this bill.
Senator Baldwin,
Aye.
Senator James, Senator Pappas, Senator Schuler, Representative Baker, Representative Gray, Representative Hallinan,
It's muted.
Representative, you're on mute.
Aye.
Representative Henderson, Representative Jennings, Representative Roscoe,
Aye.
Representative Sweeney, Representative Yin,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Case, Chairman Harshman. That passes.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a quick comment?
Yeah,
I'd-
Representative
yeah.
Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank Representative Yin for bringing this, but I'd also like to recognize, Representative Hallinan for years has been on the House floor trying to fund a program. And so I'm very hopeful we can get this bill through and keep working on funding the other tax relief. So that's already in place. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman Case is going to take over chairing the meeting now.
Okay, everybody, the next bill for our consideration is House Bill, the working draft 220222, digital streaming and digital automated services taxes. Mr.
Chairman?
Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would, without objection, if it's okay, the committee move to table this draft until the interim, and we can just keep looking at this issue.
Well, the motion to table is not debatable. So all those in favor, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it's going to be close. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All those opposed? I've got it up here. And thank you very much. Well played, Mr. Chairman. Back to you.
Oh, I thought you were going to keep going, but
I've done my work.
serious? That was only a half a day yesterday. Oh, I didn't realize that was part of the plan. I thought I was, okay, we're on item number 14, agricultural land qualifications. Josh, are you gonna present the bill? Ms. Johnson is gonna present the bill. It's your third one in this meeting. Yeah, good.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this draft is 22 LSO 207, agricultural land qualifications, annual gross revenue. And this amends what qualifies land as agricultural. And basically, the amendment is that the owner or the lessee of the land has to have derived annual gross revenues of not less than $5,000 from the marketing of agricultural products. And that is essentially all this bill draft does. And I would stand for any questions.
Okay, members, any questions? Pretty straightforward. You remember kind of at our last meeting. Okay, we're gonna move to public. Okay, Representative Jennings.
Yeah,
Question.
I just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to know if in the drafting of this and you were studying this, was there any discussion about this affecting niche farming or startup farming, either one?
I didn't look at, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Representative Jennings, I didn't look at that in particular, but if you'd like me to, I could definitely look into that issue.
Okay, we're gonna move to public comment. And I bet we have somebody online. Can you bring up, I'm sure he's there. Is it Mr. Moline? Okay, let's get him up first.
We also have Penny Vance.
Oh, good, very good. Okay. We'll go online first. And then we're gonna go to folks against the bill and then for the bill and in the room here. Okay. Mr. Moline, welcome. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau. Assuming you can hear me all right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Well, I'm glad you're all sitting down because this will be the second bill in 2 days that I've supported in front of this committee. Actually, my members' policy is to go up, we would support a bill that would go up to $10,000 of gross income of production. I hope I didn't surprise you too.
We're still in.
I am glad you are sitting down, Mr. Chairman. No, this has been our policy since for over 10 years. The level was come up with by what you used to have for gross income to qualify for the gasoline preferential treatment. That's our policy. To be quite honest, this is like, I think, the third or fourth time we've looked at this issue and our stance hasn't changed. My members have had ample opportunity to bring policy forward to change that, and nobody has. With that, Mr. Chairman, sitting in support of the bill, I would sit for any questions you or the committee may have for me.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions of Mr. Moline? I'm looking online on the television. I don't see any. Working around this way to Representative Gray.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious, Mr. Moline, why? I mean, why would your membership want this to be raised? Do they think there's an inequity? I would like to understand why.
Go ahead, Mr. Moline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, if I remember the discussion right, the discussion on having this at 10,000 was it felt the current limit was too low to qualify for the ag valuation. It should be $10,000. That's our members' policy. And again, I want to point out, this is not an exemption. It's just a different form of valuation. Yesterday, the word exemption was used, and it's instead of using market, it's productive valuation. So anyway, Mr. Chairman, that's how I hope I answered the question.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask a question, kind of maybe to put Representative Gray's question in some perspective. I kind of think of the Farm Bureau as being the professional agricultural association, and I can see that the industry is threatened a little bit by the amateurs in the sense of folks that want to have rural properties and qualify for the ag exemption, kind of undermine the industry with small acreages and hobby aspects. These guys are the real professionals, and they care about the family. They care about the whole aspect of continuing a life in agriculture. Wouldn't that be true, Mr. Moline?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I don't know if I would word it quite like that, but most of my members are well above this threshold, and it will not be a change in them. We do welcome the smaller producers into our membership, but again, our policy, I wouldn't use the word threatened, but subdivision into smaller acreage can be a threat to a lot of different things that we enjoy in this state, like wildlife. Without large expanses, we won't have the wildlife habitat, and smaller acreage can have an effect on that.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Looking around, I don't see any. Okay, well, thank you so much for your testimony today. Anyone else online?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would hope that your heart rate is back down to normal.
So far, so good. Okay, anyone else online?
Mr. Chairman?
You got someone? Okay. I thought we did.
Mr. Chairman, we have Penny Vance.
Okay, welcome, Miss Vance. Can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chairman Harshman and members of the committee. My name is Penny Vance. North of Sheridan. I'm also the ag organizer for the Powder River Basin Resource Council, and I'm speaking on behalf of our members regarding these amendments. We acknowledge that the ag tax rate is what allows our ag producers to survive. Because of high property value today, without the ag tax rate, most ag land would be
Ms.
carved into
Vance?
subdivisions. Yes,
We're getting a little static and it sounds like it's in your mic, maybe
I'm going to take off my.
microphone is touching something. It's like it's
Okay.
rubbing it.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Technology. I'm not sure where you lost me. I saying that we acknowledge the tax rate that allows most ag producers to survive. If we didn't have that tax rate, I think most ag land would just be carved into subdivisions because people could not simply not afford to have acreage that's there for ag only, and that is, I think, what would hurt our industry, our wildlife and open spaces, and we'd look like Colorado. We value the importance of the ag land taxation rate to ranching, and we're in total support because of that, to end all fraudulent uses of the ag property tax rate. We applaud that effort. So anyway, we set out to determine how many farmers and ranchers might be affected by a gross minimum revenue of $5,000. And we found that because of disclosure laws, that's pretty hard to qualify. So we really don't know. Our concerns then are based on a USDA 2017 census of agriculture statistics, which I did email a copy of those statistics to members earlier today. Those statistics indicate that the minimum gross revenue to qualify for the ag property rate, if it goes from 500 to 5,000, that over 4,000 Wyoming ag operations wouldn't qualify. That's a big number, resulting possibly in a large increase to the property taxes, and that is what would put them out of business. So in an attempt to figure out what these USDA statistics are saying about Wyoming's ag land tax rate criteria, if anything, so we really don't know, I contacted a number of individuals, including experts at UW and the Wyoming Department of Ag, and they all agreed. Yeah, these statistics seem to indicate a potential for negative consequences. However, no one could tell me who these 4,000 landowners that our census says will be negatively impacted, who they are. We do know that statistics indicate that large acreage farms and ranches in Wyoming and across the nation are decreasing in number, and smaller farms and ranches are increasing. So smaller ag operations are increasingly important to Wyoming's ag revenue stream. That's where we feel an increase to 5,000 could have the most negative impact. For instance, our ag property tax rate could be a deciding factor in our young entrepreneurs' ability to start a small ag business in Wyoming. These enterprises could take several years for revenue to exceed several $1,000s because the startup costs are extremely high. The owners might work outside jobs to get going because the statistics show that 50 to 60% of all farmers and ranchers have outside jobs. But if Wyoming suddenly raises property taxes dramatically on these budding farm and ranch operations, it's likely that a great number wouldn't be able to even get started. It's not likely that larger landowners will be negatively impacted, as Mr. Moline suggested, because they probably have the assets to increase their minimum revenue to meet the $5,000 threshold. So we're not going to address the problem of millionaires buying up land for playgrounds. So who will be impacted? Will those impacted be landowners who are abusing the ag land tax rates? How do we know that for sure? Is it millionaires buying big ranches for playgrounds? Not likely. Will they be a young couple sincerely invested in being ag producers? Quite possibly. Will they be a retired rancher who downscales his ag activities? Quite possibly. But from what we could uncover, we simply do not know. So until we have the data to know that legitimate ag entrepreneurs won't be damaged, exactly who will be impacted, and whether or not this legislation will actually weed out those abusers, we recommend that the increase be no more than $1,000 until we have the research and data to answer these important questions. And thank you for your time. And I'm I welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vance. Appreciate you joining us. Any questions for Ms. Vance? Members of the committee? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate your emails and your interest in this.
Thank
and
you.
attending with us today. Okay, we're going to move here in the room. Is there anyone opposed to this bill that would like to speak now on the bill? Seeing none, any folks here in favor of the bill? Okay, welcome back again.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dixie Huxtable, Converse County Assessor, and with the Assessors Association, we are in support of this bill. Primarily, and the biggest reason that we hope it passes is because it combines the owner and the lease amount together. Currently in statute, the owner is 500, the leasee is 1,000, and that can become problematic trying to explain and deal with. So whatever dollar amount you set for a threshold, we would just ask you to encourage you to make them the same, make the owner and the leasee the same amount. And for that, I would stand for any questions.
The amount, we've heard 5 or 10 or 1,000.
Mr.
Maybe-
Chairman,
Maybe that's an unfair question, but it doesn't seem like much of gross for ag operation.
Mr. Chairman, that is a very valid question, a very valid point. This is gross revenues. That's something for everybody to remember. This is not net after expenses. This is gross. What we have noticed in our ag statistic studies is that the commodities we use to value that land has went up in value. Price of hay has went up. The cost of the sale of cattle has went up. The value of AUMs has went up. So the return to these ranchers is higher than it ever was before, which leads me to believe that the increase is probably appropriate. As to what that increase is, the assessors do not have an opinion. I can tell you in my county, this would not, based on current affidavits, it would not remove a huge number of qualified agricultural applicants. There may be a handful, and by that, I'm going to say probably less than a dozen that are currently getting it because they only make $500. Most of them are significantly more than that. Their receipts they turn are in the thousands of dollars. The bigger question is whether they're using the land to its capability. So that's usually the.
And just maybe for our information, for our constitution, it's valued on the ability, the productive value of the land. That's probably wide variation. Some of it's not very good. It's pretty low then. Can you give us a sense of, those ag values?
Mr. Chairman, definitely the use of the land drives what that value is. So in some places, the range land is the one that's most in question. If you have dry crop or you have irrigated, in most cases, that's a more valuable land, and the commodity is going to drive that. Again, you have to be generating enough to meet the dollar threshold, but you also have to be using it to its capabilities. So when you give us a receipt for $500 and your land should be generating more, then we can consider that in our classification of ag. But the AUMs, the rangeland, you're absolutely correct. There are areas in the state where 40 acres will not run a cow, and there are places where it will. So that is a part of the whole gamut.
Okay, Representative Yin has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assessor Huxtable, I wonder if, would the assessors be able to provide the committee with a report of the number of people between the $500 and $5,000 that are making use of the ag classification?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Yen, I don't believe so, because right now our limit is 500. So if they've met the 500, I don't know how many of them could meet the 1,000. So I don't think I have that data. We can go back and ask what we do have available, but I just don't think I can tell you how many are in between that threshold.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I was just wondering if we might have an idea. What's the smallest acreage that you can remember or have firsthand experience that qualified for the exemption?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Case, boy, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I can tell you that the law right now says if it's in a subdivision,
Yeah, it
has to be
doesn't
greater than
qualify.
35 acres.
Right.
So, but we
Sorry.
do have land in township and range, and I'm sure every county can attest to this, less than 35 acres that qualifies because they've split off a piece. They've taken a bigger ranch and they've split off for maybe a mortgage purpose or some other purpose into smaller parcels, but they're using all of those parcels for their ag operation. Either calving out the cows, putting up some hay. And so I would anticipate you could have some as small as 5 to 10 acres that are qualifying, but it's part of a bigger operation typically. It's not just that land that is driving it, because remember the law says you have to meet the income threshold for the operation. It's not tied to the land. So it's not the parcel that has to generate that. It's the operator that has to generate that dollar amount. So if it takes 3 or 4 small parcels together to do that, that is allowed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Anyone else here like to speak in favor of the bill? Good afternoon. Introduce yourself. You know this real well by now.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Pat Meyer, Park County Assessor, and I like the bill. I mean, it's way better than the 500 and the 1,000. That loophole, this will help. This will help. Now, I still have a little problem with the leasee because it's still not making the 5,000 off that one part. We're missing some of the people who have 20 acres, but they got a $500,000 or $1 million house on there, but their neighbors getting hay off there, you know, leasing it out to them, but that neighbor could also be doing it too much. So it's not 5,000 if you're the leasee off that one spot. It's off all his farm things, or any farmer is off the whole, all his stuff, all the other people. So that still appears to be a little loophole to get agricultural rates when you probably aren't, you're not a legitimate farmer, you're leasing it out, you want the tax break. Now, should they not get the tax break, they can still lease it out. 20 acres, say 4,500 an acre for 20 acres, that's $600 in taxes. If it was irrigated land, it would be less than half of that. So you're not really saving that much money. So if you were making a couple thousand off that and you had to pay 600, can't you use that money to help pay your taxes? Is my big thing. Now, I'm still for this because there are other ways we can go. You know, are you using it to its maximum capacity? But I just want you to be aware that's still a loophole, and people will figure that out. That, okay, I can't do it 500, but I can bring somebody in here that leases that property, and then I could still qualify and still get a break. So that's my only problem, but.
Okay, Mr. Co-Chair has a question for you.
Okay, Assessor Meyer, how would you suggest we fix that? So would you add language right in here that says it has to be off that particular parcel?
Well, that's a problem too, for like, as Ms. Huxtable was saying, sometimes they have 10 acres here, 5 acres here, there. And so that's a whole possibility too. The only way I can, if we're really looking for the legitimate farmer and rancher, you know, I mean, are we really looking for that? Or are we just trying to get a tax break for some of the wealthy people? And we do have people in agricultural rates that only have 10 and 15 acres. And I know there are other places around the county that are not in a subdivision and still have that. And they get it, and they're getting it legitimately. But if they're leasing it, you know, I mean, I've told you before, I don't really have time to count cows or, you know, figure every year if you're using it to its maximum capacity. I know some of the assessors do that. I just don't have the time for that particular thing right now. But this will make me do a little more, even if you raise it to 5,000. So I don't have any wordings to stop this. And I don't want to, I don't think it really affects the first time farmer that's trying to lease it, because the person who had it, even if it's the leaser that I'm concerned about. He's not doing it, and it doesn't have he's still going to lease his land for the extra money. So, but why should he be getting the agricultural benefit? That's my question. And I don't have the answer at this moment to write something in there that I think would really fix this. I don't know, except for you got to be making that money off that property. That's the only thing I can think of. And if you're not, that leaser's got to pay fair market value like everybody else. But if they are getting $5,000 off that property, he should get the agricultural rates. That's about all I could say. And with that, I take any other questions.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Anyone else here would like to testify on that? And anybody else? Okay, I think we've exhausted public comment. We good? Okay.
Move the bill.
Okay, bill's been moved, seconded. Okay, moved by Mr. Co-Chair, seconded by Senator Baldwin. Okay, members,
So, Mr. Chairman,
let's work this bill. Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chair.
just conceptually, and I believe this was Dr. Hallinan's motion, perhaps at our last meeting. And I don't remember the amount being 5,000. I thought we amended it as a friendly amendment to Hallinan's motion to 10,000. Folks remember it that way?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Representative Hallinan.
No, originally the bill was 3,000 and it was modified to 5,000
Okay.
by amendment on that bill. So
I think that
it
was your,
wasn't 10,000.
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna work this bill. Any amendments, page 1 over to page 2? Any amendments?
Page 2.
Mr. Co-Chair.
I just want to throw this out here. Line 14, after the word products and before the period, insert the language from that specific parcel.
After products. Can you repeat that, Mr. Co-Chair?
Insert the words from that specific parcels.
Do we have a second? And seconded.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Representative Schuler.
that should fix the lease problem, shouldn't it? If it doesn't, let's talk it out. Maybe something else will come to mind.
Okay. Okay, any discussion on the amendment? Representative Roski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think that some of these larger producers lease a lot of smaller pieces around, not 5 or 10 acres, but 100 acres here that might not quite make 5,000 if it's just pasture or just even just hay. So I think I would be against that. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, since you're ready to vote, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Start with the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. All those opposed, starting with the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That amendment has failed. Any other amendments on page 2?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
just to give the committee the opportunity, the assessors really like the bill because it makes the two amounts the same. So I just want to offer an amendment that would reinstate the language, the deleted language on line 2, lines 12 and 13, and then delete the 5,000. So it would just set both the owner and the leasee at 500.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Representative Jennings. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of that amendment, please raise your hand. I'm going to start on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That amendment has failed. Any other amendments on page 2? Okay, Representative Jennings.
I don't have a amendment, but I do want to put something out. Do you want to go through the amendments first?
Sure. I mean, you want a question on the bill or you?
No, I'm not asking for a question. I want to make a statement.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I look at this and I think to myself, for the little guys, agriculture has not remained the same. 125 years ago, homesteaders left their places by Newcastle and places over there by the droves because they couldn't make that land work. But today, on 5 acres, you can make a living. You can't do it the first year, maybe the second. Maybe you want to raise raspberries. It's a 2 or 3 year crop. And so I think this is very premature. I feel like I went to lunch and came back in a different reality because I'm going to vote against Mr. Moline and I'm going to vote with Powder River. That having been said, I think we're not at all looking at the niche farmers or the things that agriculture has changed. And I think that's a shame that we would cut those people out without having studied this a little bit further. We don't even know what numbers we're going to affect. I think that's very clear that we don't know. So we're doing something so that we can punish the people that perhaps there's a place where we ought to go after the people that are using it as a hobby farm. I'm not saying that there's not a place. I'm saying we don't know. And I'm saying it's very arguable that you're going to squelch the young couple starting out, wants to do something, takes them several years to get it up and going. And I just kind of feel like I'm in a different reality. I'm going to vote no, and I'd ask you to too.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to finish any other amendments. We're about out of this bill, so I think we're done with amendments. Any other amendments? Okay, question? Representative Sweeney.
Discussion. So to Representative Jennings' point, I think the stock growers had represented 3,000 in their last testimony. And of course, they're in convention in Casper right now. I think that's why they haven't testified. But is there, I guess I would ask while we're on amendments, was there any dollar amount that Representative Jennings?
Okay. Is there any other amendments? Representative Jennings.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think it was mentioned of raising it to the 2,000, and I guess I'd be interested in that better than taking it this high.
Is there a second? Is that amendment? 2,000? Is there a second on that amendment? We have an amendment for 2,000 to make that number 2,000. Is there a second? I don't see a second. Okay. Further discussion? Sensing we're almost ready to vote. Representative Baker.
Just a little brief discussion, just bring this thing from my perspective. And I think about the Red Desert in my county where people have residential land that they can't access and that, it's zoned that way and the county expects them to pay taxes that way. So once we start moving away from this ag exemption, what's the alternative? We have Red Desert land where people have these parcels who are 40 acres that are zoned, residential, recreational, residential. And I mean, what's the use on some of this property when residentially you can't access it? So, I mean, can you then lease out your residential land? I mean, it makes it difficult. So anyway, just food for thought, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for the vote on working draft 207. Please call the roll.
Senator Baldwin, Senator James, Senator Pappas, Senator Schuler, Representative Baker, Representative Gray.
No.
Representative Hallinan,
Aye.
Representative Henderson, Representative Jennings, Representative Roscoe, Representative Sweeney, Representative Yin,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Case, Chairman Harshman, I have 9 to 4.
Okay, that was a 9-4 vote. Now we're on item number 16 on our agenda, severance tax distribution. Josh. Have Matt Wilmarth here too. I think he's going to team up on this, and then maybe give us a little background why we actually examined severance and federal mineral royalties for.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So recall way back at our May meeting, we had looked at this committee is statutorily required to look at severance tax distribution, as well as one other item that I can't recall right now.
Federal mineral royalty
Federal
and
mineral-
inheritance tax, I think.
Yeah. So anyway, we looked at all those back at that first meeting. There was an interest in considering looking at a potential revision to the severance tax distribution. So that's where this bill came from, Mr. Chairman. What it does on page 2, Mr. Chairman, it increases the amount of the distributions from 155 million to $200 million. Then you'll see, skipping ahead, Mr. Chairman, on the bottom of page 5, it adds a new paragraph 11 that provides for 22.5% of that amount to the school foundation program account. That accounts for that additional amount of $45 million. The rest of these changes then are to keep those accounts receiving the same amount, those other accounts to receive the same amount of money that they received under the $155 million amount. So that's why Matt is here to help with any math questions that you might have related to that. But that's essentially what the bill does, Mr. Chairman. I defer to Matt for any input he might have.
Okay, members, any questions? Matt, do you have anything to add to that?
Mr. Chairman, just the other side of the ledger. So the 155 million under the cap distributions, all the accounts stay the same. The increase of the 45 million, as Mr. Anderson indicated, moves to that additional 45 million is distributed to the school foundation program account. What that does is it reduces anything over that now $200 million, 15 million to the general fund and 30 million to the budget reserve account. So that 45 million, anything over the 155 million cap currently is distributed 1/3 to the general fund, 2/3 to the budget reserve account. So those are the two accounts on the other side of the ledger that are impacted by that amendment.
Okay, very good. And then Matt, just a question, that for the last 4 years or so, we've been putting in a second cap in the budget, a secondary cap. And what's the amounts that have gone to, how has that worked? I mean, how is that, maybe just explain that to the committee. Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, for fiscal year 21, there is a $131.8 million cap, meaning the distributions above and beyond the first or 155 million. If there's anything more distributed above the 131.8 million to the general fund of the budget reserve account, then the next 50 million would be distributed to the in equal amounts to the school foundation program reserve account and the budget reserve account. For fiscal year 22, that cap is $140.7 million. We don't project any of those, even under the revised October 2021 Craig revenue estimates to even hit those thresholds.
Yeah.
So the caps essentially provide a secondary distribution formula above under this current biennium, 131.8 million under fiscal year 21. That was not hit. Under fiscal year 22, that is 140.7 million. So
Okay. So then just in general, then, the current distributions before this bill, 96 million to the general fund at 62%. Water 1, 2, and 3 got 23.327, cities and towns, 14 million. Those dollar amounts don't change one bit on this bill. You change the math to make sure there's no losers on the under the cap. Is that correct? Highway fund, counties, county road funds, cities, towns, CapCon, all that.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. The only impact is above the current $155 million distribution to the budget reserve
Okay.
account and the general fund.
Then my last question is just the projected deficit on K-12 for the LSRA. Is it at 150 million a year now? Is that what?
Mr. Chairman, there's for the 21-22 biennium, the estimated transfer from the LSRA to the school foundation program accounts projected to be $243.9 million. That's to retain $100 million at the end of the biennium.
That's a 2-year number.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. It's really fiscal year 22. We did not go below $100 million for fiscal year 21.
Yeah.
Looking outward after the October 21 Craig revisions or revenue update, the projected school foundation program structural shortfall is approximately $100 million for 23-24, and then $78 million for 25-26 biennium.
Okay, this will be the last question. And then
And I would add just for school capital construction does have a structural shortfall as well, but it does not have the buttressing of the legislative stabilization reserve account. And that's projected to be about 61 million for the 23-24 biennium and 57 million for the 25-26 biennium. So if you combine the two, school capital construction account and the school foundation program account, that's about 150 million over the, if you average across the two bienniums.
okay, so this would really knock about a third of that off. My last question then is really, October Craig was projecting basically, as I recall, and easy to understand language, in my mind, it was like 300 million a year and extra additional revenue to the general fund, ongoing revenue, not the one time. That's what I have in my takeaway. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, I can't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I have in my head. Whether it's right, I think that's right. But okay, I'm done with questions. I hogged the mic for too long. Go ahead, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Pappas. I don't know if maybe you recall, but are you familiar with the bill that was passed out of the Transportation Committee, the Representative Obermuller's bill?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Baker, I am. I believe that bill impacted the additional 1% severance tax distribution that is currently distributed to the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund and the Common School account within the Permanent Trust Fund. So my understanding is that 1% severance tax distribution is distributed to community colleges, state aid, and then the highway fund.
That doesn't affect this severance tax. That's a different flow.
Correct,
That's
Mr. Chairman. That is
statutory
a
1%.
separate.
Is that your question, kind of?
Yeah,
That's
Mr.
all
Chairman, that's correct.
Because if you break up severance tax, say 6% on oil, 1.5 of those 6 go to permanent fund. And then 1% statutory is out there where we moved it around, then the rest flows through this. That's how.
Yeah, so Chairman, so if you look on just page 2, line 6 of the bill, it says after making distributions pursuant to B, C, and F.
Yeah.
And it's B there is that 1% severance tax. So that was the Transportation Committee bill.
So to clarify, that has no effect on this bill. Different revenue stream, different program.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay, Representative Gray.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, looking at the distribution. So by raising the cap to 200 million, those accounts, the reduction in percentage in pages 3 through 5 is recompense. So the general fund, water 1, 2, 3, cities, towns. I know Chairman Harshman kind of asked this. Highway fund, counties, county road construction fund, cities, towns, and counties, CapCon end up all being the same because you've raised the cap to 200 million. And then, so the loser is on the back end, the budget reserve account and the general fund, the part that's over the cap.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Gray, that is accurate. In the amounts of 30 million to the budget reserve account and 15 million to the general fund over the cap.
Cap is raised 45 million, 2/3 over the cap goes to budget reserve, 1/3 general fund. That's why the 30 and the 15 make up that 45. Okay, good. Representative or Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I'm not mistaken, when we took, I believe it was the COVID funds, did that not lock us into the current funding of K through 12 education? And that's what's causing us this deficit of K through 12 through 23, 24, and 25, 26. It's because of the federal strings attached to it.
Mr. Chairman and Senator James, the background on your question, I believe, is what we've termed as ESSER funds, or the Federal Education Stabilization Relief Funds for COVID-19 impacts. The first set of distributions from the federal government was from the CARES Act. That required the state to have a maintenance of effort requirement for fiscal year 20 and 21. The second distribution came from the CARISA Act that required us maintenance of effort under fiscal year 21 and 22. And then the American Rescue Plan Act, the most recent one, provided not only maintenance of effort, but maintenance of equity requirements for fiscal year 22 and 23. So beyond fiscal year 23, we do not have any requirements for maintenance of effort or maintenance of equity from the acceptance of those federal K-12 education dollars. But that is not, those acceptance of funds are not the reasons why there are structural shortfalls to the school capital construction or the school foundation program accounts.
Mr. Chairman, but they do contribute because of the strings attached to those equity requirements. They do contribute to the deficit though, correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator James, they require the state to maintain certain levels of funding and support for schools. But again, I don't believe they contribute to the shortfalls that you're experiencing under the revenue received under those funds or under those accounts.
So is that a yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, no,
Okay,
I don't believe so.
I think the big deal is we've gone from 500 million tons of coal down to 200 million. I mean, that's the big deal. I mean, let's face it, that's why we're having all these talks in revenue and appropriations. Okay. Any other questions? A lot of questions. Good. Okay. All right, we're going to move to public comment. Is there anybody online? Go ahead, Representative Gray. Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have one other question. I was trying to remind myself in the data book. I might as well, while you're here, just ask you. If you were to place these funds in the school foundation program reserve account, there's no tip or anything. That's basically like a rainy day account for dedicated to schools typically, correct? So, I mean, if you were to put it there, it would be subject to appropriation with the assumption that it would typically backfill the program account, correct?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Gray, correct. There is no trigger out of the school foundation program reserve account. So those funds would be subject to legislative appropriation at the legislature's pleasure.
And further question off Representative Gray's, how does that affect the profile? Do we profile those if they're in the school foundation program reserve account? Does that reduce the deficit?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harshman, we do profile the school foundation program reserve account on bottom of page 3, but it would not reduce the transfer from the LSRA to support the school foundation program account. So it would
wouldn't
still show the same
deficit.
Same deficit.
Okay, is there anyone online? Nobody online. Okay, anybody here that would speak against the bill, oppose the bill? Anybody here for the bill? Anybody on the bill at all? Not at all. Okay. We're going to close public comment. And members, what's your pleasure on draft 0211? Okay, it's been moved by Representative Sweeney, seconded by Senator Schuler. Okay, members, are there any amendments? Page 1 and 2. Page 3. These are the adjustments of those percentages. Dollar amounts remain the same then. Okay, page 4. Page 5. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the concept here is actually good to take funds from an account that frankly, if funds are there, they get spent, and move it to an account that has a deficit or towards that direction, and to try to address that deficit. However, I don't think placing it directly in the school foundation program account would achieve consensus in the legislature. And I also don't think it's good policy for a variety of reasons. I think we need to continue to look at spending there. And I think it's going to send the wrong message. So I think there's a couple options on where we could divert it. One is the legislative stabilization reserve account, and the other one is the school foundation program reserve account. I don't think there's a huge difference aside from perception, because LISRA is backfilling schools anyway. That statute still stays in place. It's in place. It's House Bill 236 from 2017. And I personally have a preference to put it there. And I think that, frankly, understanding the Senate, I think that that's probably the best that we would get. So I'm going to bring the amendment to put on 22 to 20, page 5, lines 22 to 23, to place that 22.5%, replace school foundation program account, and place it in the legislative stabilization reserve account. So I guess the amendment's on page 5, line 22. The percentage is not amended.
Very good. Is there a second? Senator James, second. Okay, and that's school foundation house LSRA's the motion. Okay, any discussion on the amendment? Looking online, no hands. I'm working around the dais. Okay, everybody understands the amendment, no discussion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That amendment has failed. Okay, another amendment. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'd like to try the other option on page 5, line 22, to add the word reserve before account, place it in the reserve account.
Okay, is there a second? Representative Jennings? Okay. Everybody understand where the school foundation program reserve account is? It's an account out there that has no flows to it or from it. Okay, and so the last time we had any money in it, we actually moved it to the common school account reserve account to fill that up, to change change the forecast, because we have a paper deficit where our reserve accounts only go out about 3 years, and we only profile dividends and interest. So that one little paper move savings to savings, we called it. Reduced the school deficit substantially. Okay, so it's just it's an account that's going to sit there that'll take further legislative appropriation. But I just want to be clear. Let's think about school Capcom. We have that royalty account that needs to be appropriate, but we profile that for school Capcom as part of the deficit, correct? This would not be profiled as knocking down the school deficit. Just want to.
Mr. Chairman, during the 2020 budget bill, there was a section in that bill, section 303G, that required the state auditor to transfer those funds in the school lands mineral royalties account and the sub account within the SIPA for K-12 major maintenance. Those have to have some legislative appropriation, and they were appropriated or transferred from those accounts to the school capital construction account. So this would be a very similar required action.
Profiles question.
Mr. Chairman, we do profile them because of this, the budget bill action. We don't put those accounts on the profile. We profile
No, but
the
it's
transfers.
deficit. Yeah, affects the deficit.
Mr. Chairman, we have based on the practice of the legislature.
I'm asking you a leading question. So the answer is yes, it knocks down the school Capcom deficit, but
Can we
this,
ask?
yeah, absolutely. You got it.
So, Mr. Wilmot, thank you very much. Were there recommendations from school facilities, or it seems to me I recall a recommendation that this account be eliminated? Is that right? It was discussed, or? Oh,
Mr. Chairman, are you talking about the school foundation program reserve account?
yes.
Mr. Chairman, I don't recall a discussion to eliminate, but the chairman is here and
I think it was a royalty account we were talking about.
Mr. Chairman, in Chairman Case, what I can tell you is that the Select Committee on School Facilities did sponsor a bill to codify the practice of the state auditor transferring the amounts within the school lands mineral royalties account and the sub account within the SIPA for K-12 major maintenance to the school capital construction account. That bill has been sponsored for introduction during the 22 budget session. So it would not require further legislative action within the budget bill or a separate bill to transfer those every year or biennium. So that bill was sponsored by the select committee.
Okay, yeah, great. Okay, Senator Pappas.
No, but it was just mentioned that the reserve account was mentioned that it, if you recall the conversation, we didn't do anything about it. That it was maybe a ought to be slated to go away.
Yeah, I don't recall.
Yeah. Anyhow, nothing was done about it.
Yeah. So we have an amendment, and any other discussion on it? Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So if you're correct and there are no inflows or outflows of this account, can I ask Representative Gray why he wants to put the money in this account?
Okay, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two reasons. One is the reality that this bill in its current form will never pass the Wyoming State Legislature. The Senate, while it may not be representative of the makeup in this committee, does not want additional inflows into the school foundation program account, period. Okay, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I do think that trying to address the deficit in a responsible way and trying to move some of these flows that are allocated to other accounts towards the school situation is one of the options to try to address this without increasing taxes, which is my preference. So I support the concept, trying to do something constructive here. And so I think putting it in the reserve account, I still do not think that would pass. I think ultimately the only compromise that would pass is probably LISRA, and I think that one might not even. But one, I think that there's a lot of positivity towards this policy, but we need to find the right account. And the reality is that it's just not going to be the school foundation program account on this policy. And the second thing, which is related to the first and is my personal view, is that just placing these funds directly in there, it is not the right message. And especially right now with all the federal funds, it's just not. We need to continue to look at efficiencies, need to continue to look at controlling the spend there, which is quite high comparing to other states. And I was just talking with someone from South Dakota, and our per capita spend there, and they were shocked. I mean, and so look, that's not criticizing anything or anybody, but placing these funds in the account as it reads right now is just, I don't think it's good policy. I don't think it's the right message, and it's not a policy that I think would pass the Wyoming State Legislature.
My little 2 cents on, I think that the issue really is, do we have a real deficit or not? Because somehow we always get saved. And so I've really pushed hard over the years to make sure this is really transparent. And, you know, particularly from our investment income, how that works, how it's profiled, how the reserve accounts work. How come all of a sudden at year 4, we're broke 4 years out? Every year, it doesn't matter. It's because our reserve accounts aren't big enough the way we profile dividends and interest. We just run out of money on both the general fund side and the common school side. That's a work in progress. CapFin is still working that. It's not gone away. It's going to take some more work. Hopefully we can have those bills ready and and solve some of that. So really, what is our issue we keep talking about in schools? Spending too much, don't have enough money, coal, whatever. Bottom line is, this is a way to reduce the deficit in our schools, the profile deficit. We're going to pull it right out of the LSRA. I agree with you, the politics of it. I totally agree with you. But I think you want to keep bringing solutions. And if we have to do a fallback, I think, to the LSRA or something, or if that happens, it happens. I mean, that's part of it. But I think as I leave here today, I want to try to bring a solution and knock that 150 down to 100 a year. Never raised anybody's taxes. Nobody's even going to know, except, wow, we just knocked a third of the education deficit off. So that's why I'm going to oppose this amendment and support the bill. And I totally agree with the politics, what you said. I think we all know that. But that doesn't mean we don't keep bringing the, good policy in my mind. So, but anyway, I appreciate everybody's debate and talk on this. I'm about talked out. Anybody else want to talk? If not, let's vote. Okay. We ready to vote on the amendment? And again, the amendment was to the reserve account.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to these discussions about that 22.5%, I think we have plenty of money right now from the federal government to run the schools for the next year or two. Why don't we I'd make the amendment that we put this 45 million into the common school account reserve, or the common school account. Just put it into the common school account reserve land fund. Put it into that.
Okay,
45 million into that.
Different amendment right now, though, but we got a dispatch of this amendment one way or the other. I don't disagree with any of that, but I will tell you the ARPA funds are reimbursement funds. Districts have to spend money they have on something and then get reimbursed. So it's not just sitting there to write checks. But anyway, we are on this amendment and we're going to vote. So all those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. I'm going to start on the television, working around the room. 1, 2, 3. Okay, all those opposed to the amendment, raise your hand. Starting on the television, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that amendment has failed. Are there further amendments to the bill? Okay, I'm seeing no amendments. Question. Yeah, okay. Before we take roll, any comments?
Yeah.
Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to clarify really quick that my comments were not just about the Senate versus House thing. I do think as a policy as well, I think it's better to place these funds in either the reserve account, well, frankly, in LISRA. I mean, I don't think the reserve account's the right thing. I think we put our cash into LISRA. It's backfilling schools anyway. It's the same thing. and in many ways, except about the message it sends and also, what the paper deficit is. And I understand that's a key thing for the chairman, but I think it's important to put that into Liz. So I'm gonna be voting no on this. I'm going to continue to watch this bill with interest. And I certainly understand the intent and think there's something to the intent on this. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Baker has comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to also say that, the legislature has many working parts. And, the question that I asked about the bill that passed out of transportation, I do think it's pretty relevant as far as, when we look at the 1,000-foot view. For those that didn't follow it, it takes the severance tax from the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund and the Common School account, which one representative talked about diverting money into that, and we're taking it from it in this other bill. And we're going to basically create a funding line, another one for the highway fund, when we've already taken it off the general fund. We've already done a lot of things to make it sufficient, and fuel tax and those sort of things, and the community colleges. So I just think we really need to be cautious of all these working parts. I think that we're spending a lot of time going into a budget session that we've kind of talked about. We may just be spinning our wheels again. And, I guess it's, we got a lot of things to do. I say vote no on this, and let's move on to the revenue issues that I think we can pass.
Okay, any other comments? I will just say, just so nobody's confused, that is a different severance flow. It's 1% statutory severance, has nothing to do with this severance tax. Just so everybody's really clear with that. There's nothing to do with this. And I agree. I think that bill faces a tough battle.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, we just were talking about perceived, what's perceived and what's not
Yeah.
perceived. And if we're going to take one flow and to a perceived deficit in the Wyoming Highway Department, and we're talking, it's all about perception, like you said. So I appreciate it.
Well, that's a different, but I just want this committee and people who are listening to understand, it's not this, doesn't affect this bill at all. And so we're not linking those two. Okay. All right, sensing we're ready to vote. Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote to sponsor 22 LSO 0211 severance tax distribution revision. Senator Baldwin. Senator James. Senator Pappas. Senator Schuler. Representative Baker. Representative Gray.
No.
Representative Hallinan.
No.
Representative Henderson. Representative Jennings. Representative Roscoe. Representative Sweeney. Representative Yin.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Case. Chairman Harshman. 8 ayes. So that passes.
Mr. Co-Chair,
Do you want me to take the committee, Mr. Chairman? Is that?
or you can make,
Well, Mr. Chairman,
you want to?
I'll just run the committee. You're the best
I
motion
don't care.
maker.
No.
Taking control here, you guys. We're going in a different direction now.
Yeah.
Well, the next item is, we had these series of bills prepared for phasing out sales tax exemptions. So, Mr. Chairman, are you interested in a motion before that, or should we listen to Josh first about the general
Mr.
outlook?
Chairman, I think these are pretty straightforward. I'd like us to just maybe lay these back. That's without objection from the committee, just lay these back to the interim, keep studying this issue.
Okay, so that's not exactly a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Okay. Are we going to do
All
it
of
kind
them.
of as a consent
All
list?
5 consent list, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any? Does anyone understand the motion? Do you want to divide them? Anybody wants to divide it?
Mr. Chairman. I
Representative Gray.
understand the need for time. I think we should just do each one separately, just for the record. But
So you would like to divide them?
what do you think we should. just
It's okay. All a division means is we'll have a motion on each one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not passionate about it, but I just think to be formal, but
Okay, so you'd like to divide it. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd move that LSO draft 2012, 212 be tabled till the interim.
Okay, it's non-debatable motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Sweeney's a no, or 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks like it went. I assume the rest no. I'm a no. Okay, next one. 22. So that motion to table has succeeded. The next one is 22 LSO 213.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to table until the interim. Any of that discussion?
Okay. I think we need a motion, a second on a motion to table. I don't think so. So all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're picking up steam. All those opposed, say no. Okay. Next one is 214, sales tax on legal services sunset date.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to table until the interim.
Until the lawyers are friendly, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion to table, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're losing ground. All those opposed, raise your hand. I got 1, 2, 3. So that is carried. 215, sales tax on the engineering services sunset date.
Motion to table till the interim.
Motion is to table to the interim. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You're gaining steam like crazy. All those opposed, raise your hand. Got 2 opposed. 216, sales tax on business services sunset date.
Motion to table to the interim.
All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Losing ground again. Could get there. All those opposed, raise your hand. Got 1, 2, 3. That has also carried. So all of those bills have been tabled.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So now we'll have public comment. I don't see any. Committee discussion, direction to staff. We've got one more item on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, and it is the review of previously sponsored legislation. As you all know, we previously sponsored Medicaid expansion. It passed this committee, and the motion was, we went back and listened to the motion. The motion was for it to be in a special session or the budget session. So just touching base with everybody here on this. We have a bill. It's already slated for being introduced in a budget session. So is that acceptable?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I think the issue is really, going back and listening to your motion in May was for either the special session or the budget session. And the bill, of course, was not heard. No action was taken on it in the special session. So I don't think this committee needs to take any action on the bill today. We've already debated it, I think 4 or 5 hours in was it 4 or 5 hours in Riverton? And so anyway, I think that's it. And I just think the idea that the chairman and I had, we wanted to make sure that everybody didn't forget about it. And that was really the only action to come out of that May meeting as far as legislative action. The rest of it was, the next meeting was a discussion of all these bills and a request for drafts and then to work these drafts. So anyway, I don't think there's any other action needed. I think just notification kind of where we're at on that, to get everybody's memory to recall. So that's my 2 cents, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else? Representative Gray.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you know, it's funny, we was actually having a debate with somebody about this before it got on the agenda. My position is similar to on that, you know, certainly I wanted those to be tabled. I voted for all those to be tabled on the exemptions. I thought we should go through each of them separately. My feeling on that motion, and I didn't watch it again, but that was my recollection that the word "or" was used. I think or means one or the other, and the bill was numbered. That's my recollection from the special session. So I think that it is in question. I think that, I'd certainly be voting no on the motion, but I think another motion would be required if definitiveness is what people are wanting here. I think we should give public comment again. I don't know if anyone's, what that's going to look like, but certainly the option should be given. And I do think there is question and that I think there's question, and I'm certainly not waiving the opportunity to, and I wanted to be frank about that. I think it's unclear.
Thank you, Representative Gray. Representative James, or Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to echo what Representative Gray said. Yeah, it was numbered in the special session, and it was said or. And according to our agenda, there's public comment on there on this. So it's already put out there. And according to the screen, there's 17 participants. So there's people ready to speak on this. We represent those people. They deserve to be able to speak.
Thank you.
So we need to let them speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator James. Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we lay this bill on the table until the interim. And there's plenty of time to discuss it then. And so I move we leave this, we do the same that we did with those other 4 bills, is lay it on the table until the interim. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, we have a motion to table this bill, which means I guess that it would not be considered in the budget session.
Mr. Chairman.
With the motion to table were to fail, it
Point of
would.
order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator or Representative Yin.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, to interrupt, but I think that motion is actually out of order. If in fact the chairman rules that we have sponsored it for the upcoming budget session, I think a motion to reconsider is the only thing that could stop us from sponsoring a bill in the next session.
Discussion on the point of order. Point of order, Rona.
I think Representative Yin is absolutely right. I agree with him. I think, yeah, we've already discussed this. We voted on it. The bill is numbered. There's no action taken on it. And I think it's pretty clear on that. There's no action taken on the bill. So it wasn't heard in the special session, wasn't voted on, wasn't one item talked about. So anyway.
Anything else on the point of order? Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I personally think here that the committee's positions, I think, are pretty clear on this. I think we should just lean towards caution. I think we should vote on the motion to table. The motion on whether to sponsor legislation. Once it's numbered, it's been sponsored. It's not dependent on whether the legislature further takes action on it, even referring it to committee. What you're voting on is whether to number it. It was numbered in the special session. I think that motion from May has been acted upon. I do think the word was or. I did not check that, but someone said that earlier. It was or, not and I'm not sure and would be in order. I don't think you can move to sponsor legislation for two sessions simultaneously. I've never seen that motion before. And so I just think that I think it's out there. I think just we should be formal, vote on the motion to table, and then proceed to, if someone wants to make a motion. I certainly am not supportive of the bill, so I'm not going to make a motion. I am going to vote aye on the motion to table and then proceed to public comment. And just I think that's what we're here to do is to hear and to make. And so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just looking at some records here. So the committee action was co-chairman Case moved that the committee sponsor the bill number Medical Treatment Opportunity Act as engrossed for potential upcoming special sessions or the 2022 budget session. So the word or is definitely in there, except for it's an inclusive or. It could be either or. Not that one precluded the other as I read that. But so we're on the point of order. I think that Representative Yin is looking for a ruling from the chair. So I'm not sure it matters. Both, we could rule the motion to table out of order and then walk out of here. Or we could try the motion to table. And I think that you get to the same point, because if the motion to table passes, we don't have a bill. If the motion to table fails, we have a bill for this. I think it's a pretty clear thing. What do you think, Mr. Co-Chairman?
Yeah,
I think we just, Representative Yin, your point is very well taken. But the heart of the matter is the motion to the table will achieve the exact same thing. And so it's a matter of whether we want to table or not. So people, if you vote to table it, okay. Senator Pappas.
How can you vote for a motion to table when we really don't have, this thing was acted on in a previous meeting? And as far as I'm concerned, it's still in effect. It didn't come to the special session, so it's going to come to the budget session. Unless we bring it back, vote to bring it back into this meeting. Just because it's on the agenda doesn't mean that we take action. So how do you vote to table something that's not been brought up?
So everybody, I would say that the interpretation of this is that it's still within the committee. So if you don't think it's still within the committee, then it's out there ready to be introduced. But the question is, how are we going to settle this so that we have a chance for people to, the committee members to express their votes? The motion to table would seem to accomplish that. Josh, do you have any input?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's an accurate interpretation. I think, as Representative Yin said, I think, it partially comes to a determination from the chair as to whether you think the bill is still within the committee or has already been approved. But I certainly think that vote would accomplish the same result either way.
Okay, let's go with the motion to table.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Point of clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you explain to me what we are voting off on and what's going to happen afterwards, depending on what happens? Because I'm very confused as to what's going on here. Like, in my opinion, we should always lean towards formality and leaning towards, so I don't think anybody's position here has changed. I highly doubt that has happened. But we have 17 people waiting. Now it's 19. I do think, and I want to be clear on this, that we should hear public comment. It was on the agenda. It says public comment afterwards. I just think, for clear order, either we vote on the motion to table, which would basically say that there is no bill for the budget session. That is an aye vote, is no bill for the budget session. That is my interpretation of what a motion to table means. If that motion to table passes, then we are done.
Yes, sir.
I think. If it does not pass, then I think we need a motion for the budget session. And I think for formal order, we should. And whether or not you think that or not, I think we should hear from the 19 people, because that is on there as public comment. So I just want to understand, one, what we're voting on, if you agree with that, and what the plan is based moving forward. Thank you.
Representative Gray, there is a motion to table on, and it is a non-debatable motion. So we have to dispose of that. The question was whether the motion to table was in order or not. And I'm going to rule that the motion to table is in order. So that requires us to vote on that. With regards to public comment, we've taken public comment on a final bill before. So if we want to take some more public comment, that'll be up to the pleasure of the committee. But I would think that it's clear that if the motion to table fails, we have a bill for the special session, which was in the original motion that we passed back on May 11th. So We'll hear other discussion from the committee once the motion to table is disposed of. Okay. So the motion is to table Medicaid expansion, which was called the House Medicaid Treatment Opportunity Act. All those in favor of the motion to table, please raise your hand. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those that oppose the motion to table, please raise your hand. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the motion to table has failed. So as I see it, we have a bill ready for the special session in compliance with what we have done earlier on May 11th. We've got time. If people see it different, let's hear it. Representative Baker, we haven't heard from you.
I just want to clarify. So the House didn't hear this bill, right? And the Senate did. Is that correct?
Nobody heard this bill.
Oh, I wonder, because online it says that the Senate failed this bill.
So this bill was not taken up. There was no hearing. Josh, describe what happened.
It says it.
Mr.
Senate
Chairman.
Failed
in the-
introduction.
Time out.
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Going to Josh.
In the House, it was not considered for introduction. On the Senate side, there was they considered all the bills for introduction. This one and many of the others failed introduction. So the difference was on the Senate side, there was a vote of whether to introduce the bill or not. On the House side, there was no vote.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you very much. Representative Baker.
Mr. Chairman, I guess that would be my point, that this was filed in a manner similar to a budget where it was a mere bill, the committee filed. So does that leave the bill with a live bill in the House? That's my question.
So Representative Baker, I assume the House adjourned with all bills dead? I'm sure you did. So it was not considered in the House because it was not introduced. So, one way we could go forward is to have a very limited comment period. And we could limit comments to 1 minute apiece. And this is our, last item. So that'd be one way that we could do this forward. How's that sound? Senator James.
Mr. Chairman, I think limiting people that we represent is not very representative of who we represent. I don't think that's right in any way, shape, or form.
Fair enough.
So, allowing agencies to unlimited time and then limiting our voters, it's not kosher. So I don't think we should do that.
Senator James, we haven't heard from anybody yet. I think we'll have public testimony, 1 minute apiece. If there's any subsequent motions that people want to make, that's fine. But as this bill stands right now, it's going to be introduced in the special session. Okay, who would like to start the public testimony in this room?
One more comment, Mr. Chairman.
Senator James.
If I'm not mistaken, when this was introduced in the Senate and there was a vote, we did have a debate on it. So, and we can pull it up on YouTube and look at it. It was quite a debate. So
Senator James.
I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, how there was no discussion on it in the Senate. So
Senator James, this committee passed a motion to allow this bill to be.
it is a very biased.
Senator
motion
James.
Because you have two people on here that were sponsored that bill and the rest of them voted aye on it in the previous
Senator
session.
James,
So
we just
this is
had a
very
motion to
extremely
table.
Biased
Senator James.
motion.
Senator James, we're going to have 1 minute of testimony from people on the bill. If you want to make a subsequent motion, you're welcome to try. The committee's will was expressed in May, and it was clear that it was to be in the available session. The special session, Senator James. Senator James, the special
Did
session.
have a debate during the special session.
Senator James.
It was an or. It should not be during the budget session.
I think it's a misinterpretation of the word or.
What other interpretations are there? Find me that other interpretation.
Let's take a break.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Representative Yen,
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
okay. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second to the motion to adjourn? Okay, we're going to hear testimony. 1 minute comments for,
Mr. Chairman.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to note for the record, I don't agree with the 1 minute limitation. Thank you.
We're having limitation on public debate because this has already been passed by the committee.
Yeah.
And we had full debate on both sides. And we passed a motion that it would go into the legislature for consideration. Because of the rules of the special session, that was not possible. So so this bill is still alive. This committee had a chance to table the bill and they did not. That was an affirmation that is still the committee's bill and an affirmation that it's to be introduced into the special session or the upcoming session. Does anybody disagree with that other than the people that voted no? Everybody that voted yes, is that your agreement? That's where we're at. So we do have people, we're going to allow 1 minute. We'll start with 1 minute comments. Those against. Who would like to lead us off? Yes, sir. Come on up. Make sure your microphone's on, Mr. Thank you.
I am speaking, one speaking against Medicaid expansion, as I have seen how it has destroyed other states. One specifically, Nebraska, they had passed it 3 years ago. It was put on the, it was voted on by the people. The way it was voted, people really did not know what they were voting for, whether they were voting for it or against it. Ever since then, they're now taking money from roads, education, coming up with new taxes and pushing businesses out of Nebraska. That would happen here. This issue needs to be put on the ballot to be voted on by the people, not be done in a special session or anything here. It needs to be voted on by the people. And that would alleviate this issue year after year that you guys are in, talking about it. You guys are, it's just a waste of time and money that it's you're still talking about it year after year and never gets killed or never gets passed. Just pass it on put it on the ballot, let the people vote for it. If it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it's done with.
That's your 1 minute, Mr.
Thank you,
Knapp.
sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Knapp. Who's next? Who do we have online?
Am I able to speak at this time against the bill?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Please identify yourself.
Of course. Hayden DuBois, visiting fellow at the Opportunity Solutions Project. I will try to keep it to 1 minute. So just want to ask you one question. What will your Medicaid expansion overrun be if the bill's passed? Let me explain with two quick numbers. 59,000. That was the figure provided by the Montana Budget and Public Policy Center to lawmakers in that state on the maximum level of projected Medicaid expansion enrollment. Here's the printout from Montana's Department of Public Health and Human Services dashboard. 104,000 enrollment as of November 1st. That's a 76% overrun. Two more numbers. 62,000. That was the figure widely discussed and reported here in the Idaho Post Register as the maximum projected enrollment in that state. This was the printout from November 8th in Idaho. 117,000 is the enrollment in Medicaid expansion according to Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. 89% overrun. You get the point. I know there are projections.
You wrap it up.
Yep. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
Looks like our next person with their hand raised is Angela Sylvester.
Let's have at it.
Hi. Yes. Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everybody, for letting me speak today. I am here today to speak for Medicaid expansion. I am a single mom and I work a couple of part-time jobs and I don't have health insurance right now. Having access to that health insurance would make it to where I could get a checkup, some preventative care. And it would mean a lot to me. I am a mom of a child with disabilities. And so there's a lot of extra stress that I go through. And just having access to even healthcare would make a huge difference in my life and my kids' lives. Having a healthy mom, especially for a child with disabilities, is really important. I'm going to need to be here for a long time, and because my son is going to need me for a long time. So thank you for supporting Medicaid expansion. Please continue to support it for me and lots of other parents that are working.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Sylvester. Who's next? And maybe we could tee up other people to come in at the same time someone is talking. So
Yes, they're all as participants right now. I would just ask if you are speaking against Medicaid expansion at this time, please keep your hand raised. If you are speaking for, the chairman will have a different time for that.
I think on the online, it's just a little bit too confusing.
All right.
So let's just
That-
take the online as they come, okay?
Sounds good. Then
Yeah.
with that, we have Mary Ann Budensky.
Can you say that last name?
It's Budinsky. Can you hear me?
Budinsky, welcome.
Yes, yes. And the first time that I testified in favor of a Medicaid expansion was in 1988. At that point in time, we were discussing whether or not the state of Wyoming should adopt the CHIP program. And I would urge you to expand Medicaid to cover those that cannot get insurance at this time. You've heard lots and lots of numbers. The Healthy Wyoming people have given you plenty of arguments. I believe that Mr. Forsland, who headed the Department of Health, was in favor of this, looking at crunching the numbers. Nobody does it better than him. So I'm just here to put my 2 cents worth in about, yes, it needs to be expanded. Right now, I work at the Poverty Resistance Food Pantry, which I started in 1987. And every day I see people who cannot get medical care. Many of them are low income working folks, and Wyoming needs this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Budinsky.
Yes.
Thank you. Who's next?
Next, we have Theresa Miller.
Ms. Miller, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been a resident of Gillette and Campbell County for 44 years. My husband and I have raised 3 children here. We now have 5 grandchildren here. So Wyoming is our home. In 2006, my husband, Leo, and I used the small retirement savings that we had and took out a small mortgage on our house to start a small plumbing company. And when we first started our business, we purchased insurance off of the healthcare.gov marketplace. That was a big change from the employer-sponsored benefits that we had enjoyed when my husband worked for another company. It was a bit of sticker shock, but it was part of making the plunge into business ownership. That worked for a few years, but about 10 years ago, when the premium went up to over $2,200 a month with an annual $8,500 out-of-pocket deductible for each of us, we just couldn't afford it, and we've been without insurance ever since.
Ms. Miller, could you wrap it up?
Sure. I would like you to support Medicaid expansion and continue to support Medicaid expansion so small business owners can continue to be productive and employ people in the communities.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Mhm.
Let's have, is it Ms. Jones? Ms. Jones? You're on mute, Ms. Jones.
Yes, okay, I have it off mute. Thank you for discussing this important topic. I live in Natrona County. My sons and I and Earl, we lived in a 4-plex apartment building. And Earl, he was working at Walmart. He, at home, he fell on the ice and hurt his knee. Because he was out of work a lot for his knee injury, Walmart laid him off. He had to sell his new Camaro and things to get the necessities of food, and he where was I? Well, his knee, it turned into gout. And without the insurance from Walmart, he had no insurance, no way to go to the doctor, medicine. And my sons and I took care of him.
Ms. Jones, can you wrap it up as soon as you can?
And he died from gout.
I'm sorry, Ms. Jones.
And all he needed was some medical care so he could get back to work and take care of himself. And I thank you for hearing me out about this.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Is it Sorber? Am I
Yeah,
saying-
hi, it's Rebecca Sorber. Hi.
Hi, how did you go ahead?
So I'm a retired registered nurse. Being a nurse was never really a job for me. It was more of a calling and a privilege that I dedicated almost 20 years of my life to. I worked in rural hospitals, you know, where you're chief cook and bottle washer, and sometimes you have to answer the phone. So I took a call from a man that told me that he was having severe chest pain with shortness of breath. And of course, I told him he needed an ambulance because this could be life-threatening condition. He explained to me that he didn't have health insurance and that the costs he knew would be astronomical. He had just bought a house and he didn't want to lose his house due to the medical bills. And he was sobbing by this time, and quite frankly, so was I. This call that he made and others wasn't the first time I had heard this, and it certainly wasn't the last, but it definitely stuck with me. Watching people being forced into impossible choices took a toll on me as a nurse, and it was one of the leading causes of my decision to leave nursing when I did.
Can you
So
wrap it up, Sorber?
Keep pushing for Medicaid expansion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sorber. Mr. Hours.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm RJ Hours with the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. I'm Government Relations Director for Wyoming and Colorado. And I'm here today to strongly urge you on behalf of my organization to support legislation to expand eligibility for Medicaid in Wyoming. For the over 3,000 Wyomingites who will be diagnosed with cancer this year, access to affordable, comprehensive care is essential to detecting, treating, and surviving this disease. Uninsured individuals are far less likely to have a usual source for health care, receive preventive care screenings, or access timely and appropriate diagnostic testing and treatment. Being insured is so critical to cancer survival. A recent poll that we did in cooperation with the Heart Association, Lung Association, AARP, indicated that 2/3 of Wyomingites support Medicaid expansion, and that approximately 1/4 of those surveyed worry that they may lose their health insurance and may have lacked health insurance, or they know someone who lacked health.
Can you wrap it up, Mr. Hours?
Yes, in the last year, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for the time to discuss this real important issue today and your consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hours. Is it Mr. or Miss? I can't see. I can see the back seat of your vehicle. Someone's driving. Their name is Jackson. And I don't think you should be driving and testifying. If you pull over, that would be much better. It'd be better on my mind. Let's go to Ms. Kemp first, and we'll come back to Ms. Jackson. Ms. Kemp, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Carissa Kemp, and I'm the Director of State Government Affairs for the American Diabetes Association. I'm here on behalf of the 38,658 people in Wyoming diagnosed with diabetes to urge your support on Medicaid expansion. For individuals diagnosed with diabetes, access to Medicaid coverage is essential to preventing costly and devastating complications. In Wyoming, the total direct medical expenses for diagnosed diabetes was estimated to be $311 million in 2017 and an additional $113 million was spent on indirect costs from lost productivity due to diabetes. Expanding Medicaid can help drive down these costs by giving individuals access to preventative care and reducing the use of emergency rooms and expensive complications. I greatly appreciate the committee's consideration of this legislation and strongly urge your support.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jackson, you still driving? I don't think this is safe. And you're on mute. You're on mute, Ms. Jackson?
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
So, my son was in a severe car accident in 2020, which sustained a traumatic brain injury. And we were in Denver for 8 weeks. I'm not sure if he was going to live or not. When we got the good news he was going to live, the nurse walked in with a bunch of paperwork and asked me to fill it out. It was paperwork from the Medicaid and the waiver services in Colorado. We're Wyoming residents. We live in Laramie County in Wyoming. Had I lived in Colorado, my son, who is to this day still needing additional therapies and services, would have received all of the therapies and all of the services that he needed in order to recover correctly. And instead, because we live in Wyoming, we had to decide which services and which therapies we could afford on our private health insurance, which would not cover much, what he got to do. So his recovery and his ability to function later in life has been greatly impacted by not having Medicaid expanded in the state of Wyoming.
Can you wrap
So
it up,
I
Ms.
greatly
Jackson?
encourage those of you that are in this committee to think about the impact we can have on the lives of others by expanding Medicaid and helping them.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jackson. Anybody else online? Is everybody online? Back to the room. Anybody else in the room like to visit? Yes, sir. Yeah, you could fill in and we could just go boom, 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 boom. We're going to apply the same rules about the 1 minute. So,
Mr. Chairman, we'll be
Mis-
quick.
all right, Mr. Bowley, you go first.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Eric Bowley with Wyoming Hospital Association. For the last decade, we've been advocating for Medicaid expansion. We encourage you to move the bill forward and give us the chance to have this heard by the entire legislature this coming session. The problems and the things that we've talked about in the past, what we talked about in May, haven't changed. There may be more people that would be eligible for Medicaid expansion now due to the COVID and loss of income, loss of livelihood. We stand in full support of the legislation moving forward and ask for you to continue to move that forward.
Thank you, Mr. Bowley. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So how do you guys explain with current Medicaid, how the Medicaid payments to the waiver program and long-term care facilities being 2 month delayed, having a 2 month delay right now due to the switch in the payment system?
Mr. Bowley, if you can answer that.
Sure.
Sorry about my own timer.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Senator James, the state underwent a change in who they're using to do the billing. None of those they go very smoothly. We've worked through a lot of the glitches in the system, but we're actually seeing an increase and an improvement in that. It was expected, and we actually are having better success with the changeover to the new system than we expected and things that we've seen in years past. So it's actually been a positive thing.
Thank you.
Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
James?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So it's a positive thing that you have people on the waiver program, employees, that they haven't been paid over 2 months. You have long-term care facilities that are
So
about
I
ready to
think
close.
you'll get your chance, Mr. Senator James, but do you have a question in there?
Yeah, I'm saying, why is it a good thing that they haven't been paid and you have long-term care facilities that haven't been paid? And if the current Medicaid system isn't able to handle that, why would expanding Medicaid be even better?
Mr.
Chairman,
Bowley.
Senator James, it's not the Medicaid department in our state that's handling it. It's the MIS system. We go through conversions all the time. It was done to save money for the state and to help the program. And one of the things that we see in healthcare all the time is when we convert electronic health records or whatever it might be, it never goes smoothly. What I would tell you is delaying payments aren't a great thing, but this is better than it could have been, and we expect it to be fixed quickly.
Thank you very much. How about you, sir?
Mr. Chairman, Josh Hannes with the Wyoming Hospital Association. In the interest of time, I'll just ditto what Eric said and let you move on to other folks.
Thank you. Thank you both. How about you folks? Would you like to join us at the table? Thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
In Hot Springs County, I'm here to encourage you to hear Medicaid expansion this session. We are small business owners and we are having a hard time finding ourselves in the gap with the healthcare exchange. We need assistance. We would like to help bolster the economic output of this state, but we would like to have our needs covered in the interim. Our needs are not unusual. This is common for small business owners and entrepreneurs when they're starting new businesses here. It would be a great comfort to know that we had a backstop, as it's been hard for us to maintain ourselves on the exchange and prove the requisite income.
Thank you, Mrs. Bartlett. Sir, go ahead.
John Fenton, Thermopolis, Wyoming. Thank you for listening to us today. I would just like to reiterate what she said, but also we have many people in our community and across the state who work jobs that pay barely enough to get them by. And if they have a small injury or an illness that then requires time off or they can't work, they can't prove the amount of income. They're below what they need to even get preventative or remedial care for an injury that prevents them from being productive. And unfortunately, those jobs are going to persist in the state, and we need to take care of these people better that do a job that needs to be done and are not paid adequately enough to provide healthcare for themselves. So we ask that you allow this to go in and be heard before the full body. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fenton. Who's next? Anybody next? Mr. Garrett. I'm not seeing anybody behind you. So is anybody else going to testify after Mr. Garrett? Is there anybody online?
Mr. Chairman, there's one more person online.
Okay, Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Chairman, State Government Relations Director with the Association. I very much appreciate your attention to this over the course of so many years, frankly. Obviously, it's an issue that raises a lot of compassion and passion, and I get that. This is evidence of the quilt to which I referred to yesterday. We all need to think about that, I think, very carefully and embrace the idea of how many people in this state can benefit. Every single one of us in this room can benefit through the expansion of Medicaid. But I will pledge to you, each member of this committee, that our organization will work with you, every single member of this committee, to prove up the value of Medicaid expansion to our state. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Online now.
Mr.
Let's see,
Chairman.
is it Ms. Kaufman? Do I have it right?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Kaufman. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Kaufman. I am the Regional Director of Government Affairs for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I appreciate being able to share some comments in support of the Medical Treatment Opportunity Act. We know that research consistently shows that Medicaid improves access to care for both children and adults with low income. And in fact, evidence suggests that public health insurance has a positive impact on cancer detection. Researchers have determined that states that expand Medicaid experience a 6.4 increase in early detection of cancer. By expanding Medicaid in Wyoming, thousands more individuals would be able to gain access to care they need to manage their health and treat their disease. For cancer patients, the Medical Treatment Opportunity Act might be the difference between being able to access treatment or going without. I look forward to continuing to work with the committee to ensure people in Wyoming have access to healthcare. And the sooner we fully expand Medicaid, the sooner we save lives and give Wyoming families security. Thank you so much for the time today. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Kaufman. Anybody else? We've completed everybody online. There's no hands in the room. That's it for public testimony. Back to the committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate taking the time on the public comment. I just think for this committee's sake, I think we just make another motion on this bill and work the bill and do it. So I would that's okay with you. And I agree with you 100%. I went back and listened to your motion. Your motion is solid, checked all the rules. We did all this. We did this to just double check to make sure. And I think we've come this far. I just want to make a positive motion to do pass on this bill. So I just want to move the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Got to second by, let's give this Schuler. Discussion, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a question for the co-chairman of the committee and a game plan moving forward. I mean, I asked, as far as procedurally, maybe what was the thinking of the chairman in filing a mere bill like this, and what kind of precedents was that based on? And moving forward, is that the plan of the chairman again, is to file a mere bill in both bodies to give it twice the chance at the apple?
Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chair.
I think I can address that. The special session was about mirror bills, and that was the way we thought we were going to run a 3-day session. Of course, in the regular session, in the budget session, the only bill that's a mirror bill is a budget bill. So this would not answer your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just preemptively, assuming the bill is going to pass, is it the plan to introduce it in the House?
Mr. Co-Chair.
Just me talking, and I have not had these conversations with the chairman. I would, and I think it's good, as good a time as any. I think generally, I think Mr. Chairman and I would meet and then sign these bills out to the House and Senate and kind of break up the workload. So I don't know. Yeah, the answer is I don't know yet. But
okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? Any other discussion? Ready for the question? Please call the roll. Is there any amendments?
Mr. Chairman? No. You want any amendments? Okay, I do think, and I won't make the amendment today, but if we get this into committee, I think we have a unique opportunity. And I remember it was my first session in the legislature and the FMAP changed. You guys all know what the FMAP is? I didn't know what it was. My first 2 years in legislature, I didn't even know what the FMAP was. And so it's the federal match. Okay, and Wyoming is at the absolute lowest, 50-50. And I didn't know what that was. It went from 52 to 48 when Governor Freudenthal. And it's based on the average household income of your state compared to the national household income. Well, Wyoming, as a state average income, last I looked at it, was like almost 57,000 household income. And the national average is 54. Take Teton County out, we're 52. Now, Montana's 70-30. Idaho's nearly 70-30. Utah's nearly 70-30. I think Colorado's 50-50. Nebraska's like 58. South Dakota 60. We're all like got a little extra FMAP under this CARES Act money right now. But I think there's a unique opportunity if this bill comes to the House Revenue Committee. We can add another. We've got this 90-10 thing in here. And we say that isn't going to change. I think there's a chance for us to say, yeah, we'll do this, but we want this FMAP to get back. Because our state budget is being punished because we have the richest county in the world in our state. And anyway, to get us back to really the average of our neighbors or something, I think that's a deal. I think the other issue, Mr. Chairman, with this, we know in testimony from May and Riverton, the Hyde Amendment, which is in state statute. I think we reaffirm that in this bill when we get the chance. Put that in this bill. And we know from testimony, the Department of Health, there's been one abortion in the state of Wyoming using Medicaid dollars since the year 2000. And it was for life of the mother. And I just think we want to reaffirm that because we're not going to use Medicaid dollars, regardless of what the federal government says, perform abortions. You know, and we will do this if you change our FMAP and give us kind of a fairness thing, because we got this outlier crazy average. Not the people in Midwest or Edgerton's fault. And so I think that's a couple issues. And then I think the other thing that we gotta, you know, it's a weird kind of gap. People that don't make enough money to get insurance. It's not if you make over 100, you got a great federal program that subsidizes you. And I think interestingly enough, nobody from private insurance showed up to ever testify against this bill. Because it's going to lower everybody's rates when you move some of these some of these folks got some, and I see some heads nodding, but we know there's enough experience out there, the rest of the states. It's not going to harm private insurance. Anything, it's going to help because you're going to move sick people off of that private role onto another heavily subsidized program. They're already on 90% plus a subsidized federal program. I think there's all these things we got to talk about. I'll just say this again. I went over here across the street and had lunch. I encourage everybody here in this room and everybody listening, when you go have lunch or you go buy something or you go ask the person, hey, do you have medical insurance with this job? I was able to ask two at lunch today. The guy working outside on this restaurant over here, and then the person who waited on me. So don't forget, 2/3 of these people are working. 2/3 of them are women. We had that testimony today from the independent, the business people in Thermopolis. And I just think, hey, I voted against this thing like 9 times. I think the whole thing's changed. And finally, I'll just say this one more time, because I got the floor right now, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your kindness, but in my previous job with the legislature, I was able to talk to other colleagues at those same jobs. I hear a lot how it ruined Montana, ruined their budget. I called this guy. And he's not in the legislature up there anymore, vote against it. He said it didn't ruin our budget. I didn't vote for it, but it saved our rural critical access hospitals. That's what a guy I just know on a person to person. And I know that's all anecdotes, but we're all going off anecdotes, I guess, nowadays. But I just think there's more to this, and let's keep working it. But I think there's a way to leverage this with our FMAP on regular Medicaid. And that's where I was going with this from the get-go. I think we shore up this abortion thing, because we're not going to spend money to do more abortions. And then and shore up this FMAP. I think we could make a huge thing for Wyoming. And for those people that are working, 2/3 of them are women, 2/3 of them are working, that don't make enough money to even get a subsidy. That's who we're talking about, that gap. They don't subsidize anybody under 100%. That's what we're talking about. And I know, I think I always thought, hey, these people, they're able-bodied, get out and work, blah, blah, blah. They are working. So anyway, that's my spiel. I won't make any amendments then. You hold me back. I'll hold those till if it comes to House revenue someday.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Question? Do I hear the question? Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little discussion, and I'm just wondering what the plan is moving forward again, Mr. Chairman, because we tabled 6 bills knowing that they had a kind of determined fate. And we're going into a budget session that's going to be 4 weeks, and we're going to be dealing with spending $1 billion in money. And I'm just wondering, is the plan of this committee to try to get this through the House or get this through the Senate or try through both? Because I just think realistically, the 2/3 threshold is just too much for this bill in either body. And I just wonder, now we've got tension on the committee, and we're probably going to be looked at and reported on in the press. And I think that, it's a huge sacrifice when reality is that we're probably not going to expand Medicaid this year. And it'd be nice to maybe just not vote on this and not have this same discussion again with a predetermined fate. But I don't know, maybe somebody on the committee is going to go around and start working the bill and try to change some minds, because, in the House, we have a 3-minute introduction limit, and that's going to be a big wall to jump over in 3 minutes to try to get some support, 2/3 support in the body. So I'm just wondering what the plan is moving forward.
We'll have a bill that'll be introduced and it'll be voted on. It may not make introduction. It may make introduction. You're free to do your vote the way you want today. Who's next? Senator Roscoe. Representative Roscoe, and then we'll go to Hallinan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to mention that since this Revenue Committee met last time, I looked into numbers and everything, and the new polling shows that Wyoming overwhelmingly supports the expansion of Medicaid, and I just thought we should be aware of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Hallinan and Representative Gray.
Thank you,
Representative
Mr.
Hallinan, their hands up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems like we've already voted on this. I don't know why we need to vote on it again. This bill is going to be, we voted on it in the past, and it was to be voted either or the special session or the budget session. So we have it available for the budget session. Why don't we just call this meeting agenda's over? I think this, there's no need for another vote on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Hallinan. I really couldn't agree more. We have a motion on the table, and there was doubts expressed by the committee. So we're going to carry through with the motion. Representative Gray?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And look, procedure is really important. And the motion was an or, and the legal definition of or in Black's Law Dictionary is very clear. It's one or the other. So when you numbered that first bill, I mean, we don't want to get too much into this, but this was the proper way to handle this, and we didn't need that 15 minutes of, frankly, tension. I did want to mention, though, in light of the discussion of the stance of Wyoming Heights on it, I've been made aware there's another organization that's been looking at this in terms of Wyoming Heights' attitudes towards Medicaid expansion, and has been surveying people's views in light of the implications that we've seen in other states. And I do think they're going to be releasing some data on that, and is showing opposition to this. And I did want to bring that up because someone did mention that, and then Representative Roscoe brought that up. So yeah, I'm going to be voting no on this, and I do think it is important that we get the procedure right, not having transigents, and just, this was always the procedure that was the correct way to go. I'll be voting no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Are you ready for the question? Not seeing any more testimony. Emily, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for 22 LSO 0002 Medical Treatment Opportunity Act. Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator James. No. Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Senator Schuler. Aye. Representative Baker. Representative Gray.
No.
Representative Hallinan.
No.
Representative Henderson. Representative Jennings. Representative Roscoe. Aye. Representative Sweeney.
Aye.
Representative Yin.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Harshman. Chairman Case. I have 8 ayes, 5 noes, 1 excused.
Thank you. The bill is passed again. All right, we ready to go home?
Oh,
yes.
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion.
Representative Roscoe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have a motion to reconsider 22 LSO 0287, the state assessment of independent power producers. I was on the prevailing side, so I think it's okay that I do this. And I just didn't understand the ramifications.
Point of order.
Yesterday when they were.
What is the point of order?
According to the chairman's handbook, motion to reconsider can only be made upon 15 days prior written notice to each member of the committee stating what action is to be reconsidered. So we can't have a motion to reconsider.
To the point of order, I think the actual question is whether we're still in the same meeting or not. I think you can have a motion to reconsider within the same meeting.
Not according to the chairman's handbook.
Josh, would you address that?
There are, if you look in the joint rules, there's an appendix to the joint rules that is our sample committee rules. And then those rules, if they're not amended at the first meeting, they apply to the committee. And that rule does specify that it has that same 15-day rule if it's not at the same meeting, Mr. Chairman.
So I think to the point of order, Senator James, it would be whether we consider today to be the same meeting or not. You know, I'd love to get on your side and say it's a different meeting day. But I think, you know, we have a revenue committee for a 2-day meeting. It's the continuation of the same meeting. So I think the motion is in order. Representative Roscoe, do you want to finish your discussion? You made the motion, right? You done?
Yes, I did make the motion.
Okay. The motion is to reconsider and we'll need a roll call vote. And I do want to point out something about the reconsideration. Senator Pappas, did you hear the testimony on this bill? So
I watched all the tapes yesterday. And everything this morning as well.
okay. So it's my opinion that Senator Pappas reviewed watched the testimony. He should be allowed to vote on the motion. So, Ms. Emily, would you call the roll?
And this motion is to reconsider 0287. All right. Senator Baldwin?
No.
Senator James?
No.
Senator Pappas? Senator Schuler? Representative Baker? Representative Gray? Representative Hallinan?
No.
Representative Henderson?
Excused?
Representative Jennings? Representative Roscoe?
Aye.
Representative Sweeney?
Aye.
Representative Yin?
No.
Co-Chairman Harshman? Chairman Case?
No.
Pappas, I don't know.
James, not I.
I don't know.
Right. Would anyone else like to change their vote?
Let's get your changes in and let's 1, 2, 3, the vote is closed. Emily?
7 ayes,
And how many noes?
6 noes.
The motion to reconsider has passed. Now we'll vote on the proposition, which was to sponsor. What's the name of the bill? It's the motion. We revote the motion we had yesterday, which is state assessment of independent power producers. And just to be clear, if you vote aye, and this was, it's the final. It's not the bill itself, it's as amended. Remember that, you guys. So there was an amendment offered to eliminate the confidentiality or the sharing of information, and this would strictly make it state assessed. Are we clear on that? All right. And so if you vote aye, it stays state assessed. If you vote no, because the department has vacated this ground, it would become locally assessed. Absent another bill, there could be, of course, another bill in the session, but is everybody okay? Do we understand the bill? Everybody? Okay, roll call.
Senator Baldwin?
No.
Senator James? Senator Pappas?
No.
Senator Schuler? Representative Baker? Representative Gray? Representative Hallinan?
No.
Representative Henderson?
Excused.
Representative Jennings? Representative Roscoe? Representative Sweeney? Representative Yin?
No.
Co-Chairman Harshman? Chairman Case?
No.
7 ayes, 6 noes.
Okay, the bill is passed. The reconsideration and the bill is passed. Anything else to come before the committee? Okay, I guess we're adjourned. We have a motion?
So moved.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those no? Revenue Committee's adjourned.